Hi, and welcome to this lecture about punctuation. To comma or not to comma? That's the question. Now, a comma appears to be a minor thing, but I can tell you it can do wonders to the flow of your text, providing you do not use it as a sentence rescuer. Only if your sentences are smooth and flowing, commas on the right places will support the intended harmony of connected words. Now, the good news is that the rules for the comma in the English language are quite strict and easy to apply. So I hope you are ready. We will start out with the Oxford comma. This is the final comma in a list, as in we calculated A, B, and C. Or as in interpretation is complex because of the risk of interfering contamination, comma, the presence of background DNA in blood, comma, and the lack of a gold standard. Now, although you have a choice here, meaning that you can either use it or leave it out, in formal texts, as well as in science writing, the Oxford comma is required because it leaves less room for ambiguity. The second basic rule is the use of a comma if two clauses are linked by a fanboys conjunction. A fanboys conjunction is either for, and, nor, but, so, or yet. These little words connect the two clauses in a compound sentence. So, use a comma to link those clauses with a conjunction as in fanboys. Women go to the doctor, comma, but men go to the pub. Or, Johnson was the first to notice this effect, comma, and Watson elaborates on the implications. Note, very important, that as soon as one of the clauses is contracted, the comma disappears. A contracted sentence is an incomplete sentence, leaving out a word that is implied by the preceding sentence. Like in a sentence like, these scientists state a lot but prove nothing. These scientists is left out of the second clause. In fact, you should read, these scientists state a lot, but these scientists prove nothing. But the second clause is contracted, and therefore you need to leave out the comma. Or as in several analyses show similar patterns or have the same cutoff points. Now, fanboys take a comma if they link clauses, but not if they link words or phrases. Now, maybe this instruction is not necessary because you know this already, but just to be sure, they used both approximations and surrogate models to address dimensionality issues. Or as in, it is difficult to determine whether stress is the cause or the result of these factors. So no commas here. There's no list, and there's no linking of clauses. Now, probably you know, but never forget them, linking words as starters always take commas in scientific texts. Despite this success, comma, nevertheless, comma, in addition, comma, etc. Also, when you put a linking word like that in the middle of the sentence, use commas. Our findings, comma, however, did not support. Or we could, of course, use the same sample, etc. But do be careful here. If the linking word connects two main clauses, you need a semicolon to separate the two clauses, like in our findings are unexpected, semicolon. However, comma, they can be explained. Note that this compound sentence may be split into two sentences. Our findings are unexpected, full stop. However, comma, they can be explained. So if you fuse those two simple sentences to one compound sentence, you need a semicolon to connect them. a kind of a half a full stop. Not a comma and not a full stop, somewhere in between. Very important rule in English: when a subordinate clause, a dependent clause, opens the entire sentence, so it is in front of a main clause, then you need a comma. Like in, although Fred beats his dog, comma, he is a nice guy, etc. You can read for yourself. Unless you need a break, comma, I will continue. Clear enough. But if the main clause is first and the subordinate clause or dependent clause is second, which is kind of the natural track of a sentence, main clause plus subordinate clause, then in English you can leave out the comma. So don't put in a comma here. In Dutch we more often put in a comma there. So in English we just state, Fred is a nice guy since he helped me out. Fred loves his dog as much as he loves his wife. Our results were spectacular because they demonstrated how. So no commas are needed here. There's one exception. Whereas and although do take commas, are always preceded by a comma. Like in, Fred is a nice guy, although he beats his dog. Because you need to startle the reader a bit, to give him a small pause, to recover from the shock, or to prepare for the shock. Fred is a nice guy, although he beats his dog. Or, our results were spectacular, whereas our expectations were low. So here you put in a comma to give the reader, to force the reader to have a small reading pause. To kind of underline the contradiction that is pointed out by although and whereas. That was all about the comma. Now the semicolon. The use of the semicolon is quite different. You cannot use it as a comma. It's a kind of a style feature to connect two sentences closely, but a full stop would be too much, as we have seen in the former example. Often the linking of two sentences by means of a semicolon expresses contrast or kind of comparison between the two clauses. So it expresses a relation. In that way, it's kind of a transitional feature, a transitional device. For example, the original studies examined here offered tentative evidence, semicolon. The replications we conducted offered additional confirmatory evidence. So the two different studies are compared and connected by the semicolon. Or in some cases, blah, 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 blah. In other cases, blah, 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 blah. So closely connected, but not, you don't want to split them in two separate sentences. You want to connect them, but they are main clauses, so you should connect them with a semicolon. Okay, finally, I want to give an explanation of the different functions of the dash, the comma, and the brackets used to put a phrase within a sentence to embrace them, in fact. So what's the difference? When do you use dashes? When do you use commas? And when brackets? Well, the dashes, by using the dashes, you give more emphasis to the information you insert into the sentence. The commas take care of the fact that the inserted information is kind of part of the sentence, so the splitting is less harsh. And the brackets, they push the information very much to the background, so the level of keeping the information within the sentence or underline the information or put it to the background is different here. I will give 3 examples and I think they illustrate quite clearly what I mean here. So when we state the method, now widely accepted, was still in its developmental stages during Brown's research. Now widely accepted, kind of steps in the foreground. So it's underlined. Well, when you say the participants, 33 males and 17 females, were asked to, well, there's no stress, but there's also no diminishing of the value of the information. It's kind of part of the sentence. Brackets, you use brackets when the reader might skip over the information. It's not important, but it's just a kind of an extra. So that's why brackets also interrupt reading pace for the reader, because they know, oh, I could read it, but it's not that important. Shall I step over it? So they have to think about that. So use them sparingly. That's my advice. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions or sentences with problematic punctuation, let me know and I will gladly look into them.